Antiochus II, a young and energetic ruler of the Seleucid Empire, stepped into a realm brimming with promise, yet riddled with complexities. His reign from 261 BC to 246 BC was a tapestry woven with military exploits, shrewd diplomacy, and familial intrigue. These defining aspects shaped his legacy and left an indelible mark on the Hellenistic world. This video explores the ascension, achievements, and eventual downfall of Antiochus, a ruler who sought greatness but succumbed to personal and political missteps. Antiochus II, born into the Seleucid dynasty, was the younger son of Antiochus I Soter and Stratonis. As the second son, Antiochus II was never anticipated to inherit the throne. His elder brother, Seleucus, was the designated heir, and it was Seleucus who received the training and resources typically reserved for future kings. However, a sudden twist of fate reshaped Antiochus's destiny. In 267 BC, his father, Antiochus I, accused Seleucus of rebellion. This accusation led to Seleucus's execution, an event that not only upended the planned succession, but thrust Antiochus unexpectedly into the position of heir. This succession shift altered Antiochus's life trajectory, forcing him to step into a role for which he had not been initially groomed. Growing up in a family overshadowed by political maneuvering, Antiochus would have seen firsthand the complexities of power, loyalty, and betrayal within royal circles. With the mantle of heir suddenly placed upon him, he likely underwent intensive training in governance, military strategy, and statecraft. However, Antiochus would only have around 5 years of formal training for the throne before his time to be king came. When Antiochus assumed the throne, he inherited a kingdom fraught with internal challenges and deeply entrenched external rivalries. The Seleucid Empire was one of the largest territories to emerge from the fragmentation of Alexander the Great's empire, and it stretched across much of the Near East and parts of Central Asia. Governing such an expansive and diverse realm required strong military acumen and diplomatic finesse. Antiochus' leadership was put to the test almost immediately as he faced tensions with Ptolemaic Egypt, an empire to the southwest that was a formidable competitor for dominance in the eastern Mediterranean. The Seleucid and Ptolemaic kingdoms had a history of rivalry, often clashing over contested lands and influence in the region. Antiochus stepped into this conflict with a blend of ambition and caution, as he was aware that the balance of power with Egypt could determine the Seleucid Empire's stability. His reign soon saw him entangled in what would become the Second Syrian War, a complex conflict where he sought to curb Ptolemaic influence and expand Seleucid control. The Second Syrian War was a pivotal chapter in Antiochus's reign, underscoring the long-standing enmity between the Seleucid and Ptolemaic dynasties that had brewed since the partition of Alexander the Great's empire. This war erupted shortly after Antiochus ascended the throne, driven by ongoing disputes over control of Syria, a fertile and strategically significant region. Syria had been contested for decades, and Antiochus viewed it as central to his empire's territorial integrity and access to key Mediterranean trade routes. To strengthen his position, Antiochus aligned with Antigonus, the second Gonatas of the Antigonid dynasty, creating a coalition that could more effectively challenge the powerful Ptolemaic forces led by Ptolemy Philadelphus. Through his partnership with Antigonus, Antiochus gained a valuable ally, enabling the Seleucid forces to make substantial advances on multiple fronts, most prominently along the coasts of Asia Minor. The war itself was marked by fierce battles across this expansive territory, particularly in cities along the western coast of Asia Minor. Antiochus scored several significant victories, capturing prominent cities like Miletus and Ephesus. These victories were more than just territorial gains. They granted Antiochus access to the Aegean Sea, bolstering Seleucid influence over maritime trade routes essential to the economic vitality of the empire. Control over these cities not only expanded the Seleucid realm, but also allowed Antiochus to establish a direct line to the Aegean, enhancing both his military reach and economic power in the region. During these campaigns, Antiochus adopted the title Theos, meaning God, a significant decision with deep cultural implications. This title was particularly resonant among the Milesians, who saw him as a divine liberator after he removed the tyrant, Timarchus. By assuming the title Theos, Antiochus was positioning himself not just as a military leader, but as a godlike figure in the eyes of his people. Such a designation likely elevated his status among his subjects, reinforcing loyalty and allegiance while projecting an image of divinely sanctioned rule. In essence, the Second Syrian War was more than a territorial conflict for Antiochus. It was a stage upon which he expanded Seleucid influence, cemented alliances, and reinforced his authority. His successes along the Asia Minor coastlines strengthened the Seleucid Empire's hold on trade, while his self-designation as Theos added an enduring divine facet to his legacy, bolstering his standing and shaping his image as a ruler with both military and spiritual authority. Antiochus's expansion efforts in Thrace represented a key component of his overall strategy to extend Seleucid influence into critical territories beyond Asia Minor. This ambition likely stemmed from both the geographic and political significance of Thrace. Positioned between the Balkans and Asia Minor, Thrace was not only a gateway between Europe and Asia, but also a region whose control would bring immense strategic advantages, including influence over crucial trade routes and added security against potential incursions from rival states in the north and west. Though detailed records of his Thracian campaign have not survived, numismatic evidence provides valuable clues to Antiochus's intentions. Coins minted in Byzantium bearing Antiochus's name and image suggest he sought not only a military foothold, but also a lasting political presence in the region. These coins were an assertion of his authority, signaling to the local populations and to rival powers that Thrace fell within the Seleucid sphere of influence. Coinage, in Hellenistic times, was often used as a tool of soft power, spreading a ruler's image and legitimacy throughout contested areas, even in the absence of a substantial military occupation. Antiochus's interest in Thrace aligns with the broader ambitions of his dynasty. The Seleucids sought to bolster their northern frontier and contain the influence of competing powers, particularly the Antigonids in Macedon and the rising influence of the Greek city-states in the Balkans. Thrace, with its relatively autonomous tribal communities and minor kingdoms, presented both an opportunity and a challenge. Securing the region could extend Seleucid power into Europe, but it would also require careful diplomacy and considerable resources to maintain control over a region known for its fierce local independence and frequent uprisings. While the absence of records leaves the exact outcomes of his campaign unclear, the lack of lasting Seleucid control in Thrace suggests that any gains may have been brief or difficult to sustain. Thrace's notoriously difficult terrain, coupled with its decentralized tribal society, would have posed substantial obstacles to a sustained Seleucid presence. Additionally, the Seleucid Empire was already deeply engaged on multiple fronts, particularly in its ongoing conflicts with Ptolemaic Egypt, which may have limited the resources Antiochus could commit to a full-scale occupation of Thrace. The ephemeral nature of Antiochus's campaign in Thrace, whether due to military limitations or shifting priorities, reflects a pragmatic flexibility in his rule. While the Seleucid kings harbored grand ambitions of expansion, they were also acutely aware of the logistical and political realities that constrained their power. For Antiochus, the decision to extend Seleucid influence into Thrace appears to have been an exploratory venture rather than a dedicated conquest, allowing him to test the waters of European expansion without fully committing his empire's resources. By 253 BC, after years of conflict, the Second Syrian War ended with little to show for either side. The struggle between the Seleucid and Ptolemaic empires, particularly over Syria, had drained resources and intensified rivalries, but ultimately failed to shift control of this prized region, which remained securely under the Egyptian Ptolemies. Facing growing instability within the region and the weakening of his allies, the Antigonids, due to internal uprisings, Antiochus recognized that continued fighting would bring more losses than gains. With this realization, he opted to negotiate peace with Ptolemy, seeking a settlement that would prevent further conflict. To formalize the peace, Antiochus agreed to marry Ptolemy's daughter, Berenice. This marriage was meant to cement the newfound truce and create a familial alliance that could discourage future hostilities. However, this union required Antiochus to divorce his first wife, Laodice. Though an expected consequence of dynastic politics, this decision to replace Laodice with Berenice was highly unusual and fraught with potential complications. Laodice had long-standing connections, personal influence, and supporters across the empire, all of which contributed to her status as more than just a queen consort. The marriage between Antiochus and Berenice came with specific terms. Any children they produced would inherit the Seleucid throne, effectively displacing the children of Antiochus's first marriage with Laodice. This stipulation was intended to solidify Ptolemaic influence over the Seleucid line of succession, establishing a dynasty that would be, at least in part, Ptolemaic by descent. Following their divorce, Antiochus ensured that Laodice maintained a prominent position within the Seleucid Empire by providing her with extensive land holdings across Anatolia. These estates were not ordinary properties, but included lands in strategic locations such as the Hellespont, which was critical for trade and military routes, along with valuable lands near Cyzicus, Ilion, and Caria. Each of these regions had economic and political importance, offering Laodice a stable and substantial revenue stream, further enhanced by her exemption from taxes on these lands. Such financial independence was rare for a woman of the period, highlighting Antiochus's regard for Laodice's status and influence even after their marriage ended. The territories granted to Laodice were recorded in royal inscriptions, a clear indication of the enduring respect Antiochus held for her. These records reinforced her status as a formidable figure within the empire, as the inscriptions not only documented her rights to these lands, but also publicly recognized her position in the Seleucid hierarchy. This support from Antiochus, formalized through royal decree, ensured that Laodice's influence remained both visible and legally protected, solidifying her authority in Seleucid society. Laodice's power went beyond her wealth and estates. Her political influence was deeply entrenched in the Seleucid court. As a former queen and mother to Antiochus's sons, she commanded a loyal following and wielded considerable authority over court factions and military officials who supported her family's interests. This influence became crucial as she championed the political future of her sons, especially in her quest to see them reinstated as rightful heirs. Laodice's efforts to restore her sons to power were not mere familial ambitions. They became central to the court's political intrigue and power dynamics. As Antiochus's reign continued, Laodice's efforts to reclaim her family's position only intensified. Her ambition for her sons to ascend the throne was driven by both a personal desire for power and a sense of legacy. She understood the importance of securing a place for her descendants within the ruling hierarchy of the Seleucid Empire. In 246 BC, Antiochus's relationship with his second wife, Berenice, deteriorated unexpectedly. After the recent death of Ptolemy II, Antiochus made the fateful decision to leave Berenice and their young son, also named Antiochus, in the city of Antioch and travel back to Asia Minor to reunite with his first wife, Laodice. This move proved to be more than just a personal decision. It reawakened underlying tensions and had significant political repercussions. By abandoning Berenice, Antiochus effectively dissolved the delicate peace brokered with the Ptolemaic kingdom through his marriage alliance. This reversal seemed to mark his growing preference for Laodice and their mutual ambition to restore her line to the throne, a choice that would soon destabilize the Seleucid Empire. Upon his return to Laodice, Antiochus's life abruptly ended under suspicious circumstances. Although no definitive evidence exists, rumors quickly spread that Laodice had orchestrated his death, possibly through poisoning. Historians speculate that her motive may have stemmed from a desire to secure the throne for her own son, Seleucus, and eliminate any threat from Berenice and her child. Laodice, who had felt slighted by her dismissal years earlier, likely viewed Berenice's infant son as an obstacle to her ambitions, which could only be overcome by reclaiming her influence over the Seleucid court and ensuring her son's succession. Antiochus's sudden death thus left the empire vulnerable and ignited fierce power struggles. After Antiochus's death, his remains were laid to rest in the Grand Balevi Mausoleum, a tomb constructed near Ephesus in Asia Minor. However, the peace of his burial contrasted sharply with the chaos he left behind. With his passing, the Seleucid Empire was plunged into a state of crisis. Laodice quickly began to move to assert her son Seleucus's claim to the throne, positioning him as Seleucus II and dismissing any legitimacy to the claims of Berenice's young son. And so the seeds of war were sown. The reign of Antiochus II was marked by ambition, conflict, and betrayal, encapsulating the volatile nature of Hellenistic politics. His successes in Asia Minor and his alliance with Antigonus II showed his determination to expand Seleucid power, while his title of Theos reflected the esteem in which he was held by certain subject cities. However, Antiochus's decision to divorce Laodice and marry Berenice in the interest of peace ultimately destabilized the empire. The succession crisis that followed his death led directly to the Third Syrian War, a conflict that weakened the Seleucid state and marked a turning point in its decline. Antiochus II's legacy is thus a complex one, as his reign both extended Seleucid influence and set the stage for its fragmentation. His rule is remembered for its dramatic twists and the powerful personalities involved, offering a glimpse into the challenges of governing a vast and diverse empire in an era of constant warfare and political intrigue.